Hello. I haven't been recording for a while now, and well, I've been kind of busy, but I did a little work today, and I thought it was kind of interesting, so I thought I would share it with you. First of all, I have been wanting to get a second system for some time now. Uh, my current system, the Ryzen 3600 system. It's an X570 motherboard. Uh, I picked up a K80 for it so that I could do machine learning. And I had to put that in the 16 times slot, and that left me with a 4 times slot. The X570 only has one 16 times slot for PCIe. Uh, and that's not so great. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? Uh, there's no graphics on that card, so I have to run. I have to put a second card in there. I have to put in my 1050 Ti so that I can get some graphics out of it. Ryzen doesn't have onboard graphics, so that's not an option. And when I put the card in, it was touching one of the capacitors on the motherboard. And so I didn't like that. So at that point, I started wondering, what are the different solutions for running getting more out of my computer or out of my existing hardware. Now, I've got a Mac Pro that's been sitting idle for a while. It's a 3.1 2008 Mac Pro, which is a kind of an amazing machine for being from 2008. And I thought, well, if I could get Ubuntu running on that, then I could have that as my front end machine, and I could just SSH into my Ryzen box and do whatever machine learning tasks I wanted to do on that box. And this may be a solution. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far yet. The first hurdle was to get Ubuntu running on my Mac Pro. And this is not an easy task. Not by a long shot. So there seems to be a problem with installing any Debian-based distribution onto Mac Pros. And so I tried and I tried, and I just couldn't get it to work. So I said to myself, why don't you do this? Take an SSD, put it in your Ryzen box, install Ubuntu on that, and then stick that inside the Mac Pro and see if it works. Well, it did. Surprisingly enough, it did work. So once I got Ubuntu running on there, it looked like crap. Because I had the old card in there from 2008 with I don't know, maybe it has a half a gigabyte of VRAM on it or something like that. Something ridiculous. So I thought, well, all right, let me take my 1050 Ti and put it in there and see how it looks. And so right now you're seeing how it looks. This is OBS on my Mac Pro. And let's see, I'm just going to switch over to the desktop here and switch over to Google Chrome. So I think this looks pretty good. It's not perfect. I've got a 4K monitor, so this may look really tiny on your if I'm watching this on YouTube, this might look really tiny, but it's actually, it's pretty damn good, and it's surprisingly fast. When I switch around here, let me see, go back to OBS here. It happens, just about instantaneously. Video playback is good, and sound quality is good. So I'm thinking that this may be my new front end, and I may put some things out on my Ryzen system. Hopefully this will keep me happy. Now you may ask, why don't you just put the K80 in the Mac Pro? For one thing, the Mac Pro has two 16 times slots. Well, the difficulty is power. So even though I think the Mac Pro has a pretty beefy power supply in it, let's take a look at this 2008 Mac Pro power supply. Let's see, how many watts? I think it's a 1,000-watt power supply. I think it's quite large. But it doesn't have the kinds of connectors that, what does it say here? Yeah, it's got a 980-watt PSU in it, which is quite large, but it doesn't have the kind of connectors that I'm used to inside of a PC desktop. So, if you want to put a card like a K80 in there, you have to give it additional power. And the Mac Pro does have a way to give additional power to a GPU. I'll just pull that up here. The problem is it's not enough. Let's see if I can show you how this is done here. All right, so here it is. The Mac Pro has two auxiliary PCIe power ports. Has two auxiliary PCIe power ports on the logic board. If you're attempting to install multiple graphics cards that require PCIe power cables, you should also use an additional PSU. So nearly any PC PSU can be used. An ideal PSU will provide a minimum of 300 watts and have a combination of 6-pin and 8-pin, blah, blah, blah. We at Mac Video Cards simply sit our PSUs on the desk next to our Mac Pro. So that's a possibility. I could take a power supply that I have. Let me see if I can find that. Well, I'll look for it later. I've got a 450 watt power supply, which I could sit on top of the Mac Pro, and I could run the additional power cables in. But even then, I think it might be a problem because the K80 requires 300 watts of power, and that means that each of those cables has to provide 150 watts. And the GPU cables that come out of power supplies, I think, only have 70 or 75 watts. So it's not enough. The cables that come out of a power supply that go into the motherboard, however, are 150 watts. And so that's really no, I'm sorry, it provides 300 watts, what comes out for the motherboard. And it comes out in two cables. So yeah, it's 150 watts each. And so I guess I could take that cable from a power supply and put it into or those cables from a power supply and put it into the K80, and that would be all right. And as I said, there are two 16 times PCIe slots on the Mac Pro, which is kind of interesting that, this computer was built so well that it had more PCIe lanes on it than this modern computer with the X570 motherboard. But I didn't really want to do that. Some people also, I'm told, put the power supply inside the CD-ROM, and so that's another way to do it. In any case, I was very surprised that I was able to get this running, and I've even managed to put on the Pop! OS shell so that I can do tiling. I tried to do an upgrade from Ubuntu to Pop! OS, and it failed. So I don't know why it failed. I tried it several times. I suppose that at some point I might be able to do that. The other possibility for this box is that I can probably get Fedora to run on it. I have read in some forums that people have had good success putting Fedora onto their Mac Pro, and that is a good idea for a couple of reasons. One of which is that has GNOME 40 on it, and I would like to try running GNOME 40. I hear it's a very good desktop environment, and that even though Ubuntu says it's not ready for prime time, it's more likely that they were just stressed for resources and they didn't want to do it. I don't want to say anything negative about Ubuntu because they do this for free. So, how can I really complain about them? And I use their product. On this machine, I'm running Ubuntu 20.04, and on the other, I'm running Pop! OS 20.10, which is based on Ubuntu. So, yeah. There's some slight lag here with the video, and I don't know if that's some setting that I'm messing up. I'm only getting 30 frames per second from my video card. I don't know why that is. I should be able to get 60 from it. Something I'll have to work on. Also, I'm only getting 100 megabits from my Wi-Fi card, and I believe I should be able to get 300 megabits. I've got 200 megabits service here, so I should be able to get the full 200 megabits when I run a speed test. I'm not getting that. So, the next thing for me to do is get that K80 installed and set up SSH, a key-based SSH, so that it's very secure, and start testing that. And I also want to see what kind of graphics can come out of that Ryzen system and be displayed remotely onto this Apple computer. Now, one thing that I think we should take a look at here is, let me run Sysmon and System Monitor and see what's going on with this thing, CPU-wise and memory-wise, etc., etc. And from what I'm seeing now, running Ubuntu, this does not look to be, what are we getting here? We're getting a lot of these CPUs at around 30% with just OBS running and the operating system. So it does seem to be straining the system a bit. Memory is, it's not really doing much. Network, not so much. But we can see that I am using quite a bit of CPU just for running OBS. And I'll have to see if, I don't know, these are Xenon processors on here, dual Xeon processors. So you see that there are 8 cores altogether. So 2 quad-core Xeons, and these Xeons, let's take a look at the 2008 3,1 Mac Pro, dual Xeon. So here are the specs on this here. They're 2.8 gigahertz, so that's pretty quick. Harpertown processors. Now, I suppose I could upgrade this probably fairly cheaply to some faster Xeons. And that might be a way to get some better performance out of this. I don't know. I have to look at the price and so on and so forth. But for hardware that I own, that I have in the house, this may be a good solution to allow me to safely use the equipment that I have. As I said, well, I'm not sure that I did say it, but I'll say it now. When I had the K80 in my Ryzen system, and I had the 1050 Ti in there, it worked fine. I have no complaints about it, except for the fact that that 1050 Ti was touching the capacitors next to the PCIe slot, and it was only a 4-time slot, by the way. But it was giving me very good performance, and yeah, no artifacts, no problems of any kind that were detectable to me. But I did not feel safe with that card touching. This X570 board really is not meant to have 2 GPUs in it, or a GPU and a TPU, I should say. So I have no doubt that this system here is going to be fine for videos, YouTube and things of that sort, this 2008 Mac Pro, and it just as a front end to run SSH and that sort of thing. Should be good, and leave the big guns for doing machine learning. In any case, I will keep you updated on this, and the next thing I'm going to do is, I've got a lot of work to get this system the way I like it. Right now, there are a lot of things that have to be done, a lot of things that have to be added. I have to set up my GitHub account and so on and so forth. Although, a lot of that kind of thing could be done using SSH on the other box. But I know that I'm going to want to set up GitHub on this box also. I'm going to want to get I'm going to want to get ZSH on here, Oh My ZSH. I'm going to want to get a better prompt on here. There are a lot of programs that I generally have installed that I'm going to want to put on here. And so I'll probably make another video soon that covers some of those things. And then the third video in the saga is going to be when I actually get the K80 in the other box and start getting SSH done correctly and maybe screen sharing. I'm not sure if that's going to be an option for me if I run the Ryzen without a GPU as a headless server. But we shall see. In any case, I thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you found this interesting.